Welcome, everyone, to Center of the American Experiment's 2020 Virtual Gala. Every year for the last 30 years, American Experiment has hosted an annual dinner. They have been great events, but this year, due to COVID restrictions, we have gone virtual. The annual dinner is a fundraiser, of course, and I want to express our deep appreciation to our table sponsors for this year's event. Every single one of our annual dinner table sponsors has stayed with us, even though there is no table and no dinner. We are profoundly grateful. While there won't be a dinner, there will be a lot of fun. We will start with the national anthem. Then there will be a video highlighting American Experiment's achievements over the last year. And finally, a live presentation by former Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders with audience Q&A. Also, in order to make our virtual gala more fun, our staff has encouraged viewing parties where groups of people can get together to watch the gala. We offered party boxes to anyone who registered a watch party. The boxes contain some really good popcorn, an American Experiment wine opener, plastic champagne glasses, 3 posters and some note cards with pro-freedom themes, a refrigerator magnet, and more. As it turned out, more than 60 groups around the country registered viewing parties. Tonight, we are going to cut away to a few of them live. At last year's annual dinner, 12-year-old Amelia Stobie sang the national anthem a cappella. She was a big hit. This year, Amelia is 13 and is back with us again to sing the anthem. Please welcome Amelia Stobie. And given the controversies that we are now going through, I would encourage everyone, wherever you are, to stand for the anthem if you are able.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Can't resist clapping. I hope you're clapping too. Thanks, Amelia. That was terrific. I think we may need to sign Amelia to a long-term contract. Well, let's go to our first watch party right now. It is being hosted by Katie and Callie in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. Katie and Callie, there you are. Are you guys having fun?
Yeah, a lot of fun. How are you?
What did you like best in the party box that we sent you?
Honestly, the cards were the best part by far. Whoever drew them is seriously so talented.
Yeah, cards with a freedom theme, actually drawn by the daughter of one of our member of our organization. They're just beautiful. And then on the wall behind you, we see some posters, right?
Mm-hmm. They also sent those, support our police and freedom.
Yeah, they all came with the party box, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, don't put the champagne glasses to too much use tonight, but do enjoy the virtual gala. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it.
All right, let's check out another viewing party. The Freedom Club of Minnesota is holding a watch party at the Stock and Barrel Gun Club in Eagan, Minnesota. They're combining shooting pistols with watching the American Experiment Gala. Let's see if we can check in with them, assuming they're not all up on the range shooting. And it looks like we've got the Frida. Alex Karam, there you are. Alex, how's it going? Alex, you might be muted. Alex, I think you're muted.
Okay, so we're muted, everybody. Let's try again. Is that better?
That's much better. That's what we like to hear, some cheering and some clapping. Have you guys started shooting yet, Alex?
A few people, I think. Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to say yes.
If I weren't here tonight, I'd be with you. That's the gun club that I usually shoot at. So you guys have a lot of fun and hit some bullseyes for us. Have fun, enjoy the evening, and enjoy the gala. We've got one more watch party we want to cut away to. This one is at the home of Jeff and Helen Biro in Minneapolis. And Jeff and Helen get extra credit because it was originally their idea to hold a viewing party. That's where the whole concept of viewing parties came from. So let's go live now to Jeff and Helen Biro's house in Minneapolis.
Born and raised in Portland, Oregon. And then, so my parents drove out, met them in Philadelphia.
There they are. This is a large and enthusiastic viewing party. And I recognize Jeff and I recognize Helen, and Grace was up close to the camera a couple of moments ago. Guys, what part of tonight's program are you looking forward to the most?
Celebration of all the achievements of the center and all the dedication and hard work that everybody puts into Thinking Minnesota and sharing the research that you do for all on behalf of Minnesota. We're grateful.
Great answer, Helen. Great answer. Now, you guys remember at all the viewing parties, there's like 62 of them. We're only cutting away to 3, but all of the viewing parties, remember to take a couple of pictures and email a photo or two to events@americanexperiment.org, events@americanexperiment.org. And in the next issue of Thinking Minnesota, as part of the article about the virtual gala, we're going to include some of those photographs that came from the viewing parties. Well, do we still have the Biros? One last question for the Biros. What are you guys drinking tonight? Uh-oh. It looks like we will never know. We'll never know the answer to that question. All right. Well, anyway, there's a lot of people around the country having fun tonight watching the virtual gala. At our annual dinner, I usually do a PowerPoint to talk about some of the accomplishments of American Experiment over the past year. This year, because the event is virtual, we decided to make a video instead. It was produced by Allison Payne, and we hope you enjoy it.
In Minnesota, we work hard and we play hard. Not everyone has the time to follow important debates about healthcare, taxes, and our kids' education. But people we don't know are making decisions for us every single day. That's where Center of the American Experiment comes in. We research the tough issues facing Minnesota to find common sense solutions and give you a voice. Center of the American Experiment is Minnesota's think tank, and we're working hard to make Minnesota better for you.
I have never been prouder of this organization than I am right now. We had a challenging year. Every nonprofit in America had a challenging year in 2020, and I can't believe how well our staff rose to the occasion.
By being a kind of critical voice, but not needlessly critical. There's been a lot to criticize. We've become one of the most relevant points of information for policy discussion in the state.
We haven't lost a single beat. We've continued to put out great papers, articles, launched projects and campaigns that have reached thousands of Minnesotans and that echo the sentiments that these Minnesotans are feeling during all this uncertainty.
We did a whole series of webinars this year. We started out with the masterclass series where all of our policy fellows talked about whatever their areas of expertise are. We had a very fun event live with Adam Carolla. He had a new book out. Maybe the most noteworthy one that we did was with Heather McDonald. She really delivered the definitive presentation on crime and race and policing in the United States. And it's a really, really important presentation. I hope everybody sees it. After a few months, it became obvious that Minnesota's economic and social shutdown had to end. And so we started up our Back to Work Minnesota campaign. We set up a website, backtoworkminnesota.com, and on that website, people could send emails to Governor Walz, and they sent emails to their own representative and senator. More than 52,000 emails got sent to those officials. The campaign was so successful and so well executed by our staff that it won this year's State Policy Network Award for the best issue campaign done by any policy organization in the United States. So we're very proud of that. One of the most important campaigns that we did this year was to support law enforcement. And again, this is something that came up fast. We had the George Floyd incident, we had the riots, we had the attacks on law enforcement, we had the talk about defunding police in Minneapolis and some other cities. And we responded to that with a campaign to encourage Minnesotans to support law enforcement. We put up 38 billboards around the Twin Cities. And of course, one thing that happened in that campaign is that leftists started defacing our billboards. They didn't like to see visible support for law enforcement. 8 times leftists went out and defaced those billboards, and 8 times we put them right back up. And we set up a website, supportmnpolice.com, and on that website you can sign a petition in support of Minnesota law enforcement. So far, over 30,000 Minnesotans have signed the petition at supportmnpolice.com, and if any of our viewers here tonight have not signed that petition, please do. It remains a very important issue.
At the start of the year, I released the economy report. $1.5 billion was a forecast budget surplus up to the middle of 2021. That's gone, and now the conversation is very, very different. How do we close this deficit? There will be people who say that we should hike taxes, but of course our taxes are already some of the highest in the United States.
I think one of the biggest issues facing Minnesota is the possibility that the state government might try to raise taxes next year. Most of that really is just a matter of reducing spending or raising taxes, but from what has been seen, the state government seems to be very reluctant to cut spending. So there's a high possibility that they might raise taxes, which is bad for every Minnesotan here.
We have a teachers union who has far too much control over our state politics, but also over K-12 education. We have seen over the years that despite increased spending, too many Minnesota students are being left behind and they're not getting access to the academic success that they deserve in order to be successful outside of the classroom. Currently, we are wrapping up our annual Educated Teachers MN project, focusing on teachers' annual September opt-out window. And for a lot of teachers, they're saying, you know what, the union isn't representing my voice and my choice, and I'm going to do something about it. It's been great to work with our wonderful educators across the state and help them realize those options.
We worked together with 4 other organizations in Washington to try to bring about a rule change that would prevent the government unions from skimming off dues from payments that are made under Medicaid to personal care attendants. It was a scandal that the government unions were really stealing money out of this program. And we were able to bring about a rule change that made that dues skimming illegal, finally. And as a result of that, the State Policy Network gave us and those other 4 organizations what they called their Network Award to recognize working together on a multi-state coalition to try to bring about, in this case, successfully bringing about a result that had national importance. So on very, very short notice, we whipped up a back-to-school campaign. We're still fighting that battle. Schools are still wavering, even though we're well into September, on what exactly they're going to be doing this year.
I've been watchdogging and exposing what the left is up to on a host of social, cultural, and educational issues here in Minnesota. The riots, the disorder, the statue toppling we've been seeing, the push for white privilege curricula and teacher training in K-12 education.
So the magazine gives us a great opportunity to take our policy work and put it in formats where people will actually read it and benefit from it. And the circulation of the magazine has steadily grown. The latest issue, the July issue, went out to 97,000 people, almost all in Minnesota. So it's become a really powerful weapon, a powerful tool for the conservative movement in Minnesota. Isaac Orr and Mitch Rolling produced a paper called Doubling Down on Failure about the green energy mandates here in Minnesota. And it exposed the $80 billion cost of going to a 50% wind and solar mandate, talked about the number of jobs that would lose here in Minnesota, and talked about the infinitesimal benefit it could possibly do in environmental terms. The State Policy Network awarded Doubling Down on Failure the prize as the most influential research of 2019.
You know, wind and solar are the original forms of energy that we ever used. We stopped using them because they weren't reliable. Wind and solar aren't the future, they're actually the past of energy. Fossil fuels are probably the present, and nuclear is the future.
That American Experiment is a grassroots organization, and we make a major effort to get out around the state and to get together in person with people. That's a very important part of who we are. We just finished the auto tour where we hit 17 greater Minnesota towns in 2 weeks.
We're collecting like thousands of comments to dump on Governor Walz and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency about his attempt to put California car mandates here in Minnesota. Like, I have no idea why. It's like, let's mandate thousands of electric cars on the road and then not have a power grid that's reliable enough to charge our electric cars. It's nuts.
When you look at the Twin Cities, we are so far out of step with the rest of every other major metropolitan area in the Midwest. Our housing costs are 57% higher than anywhere else in the Midwest. It's a big problem for people in the middle class, and it's particularly a big problem for people who are poor. We dug really deep into potential reasons why the Twin Cities housing costs are just so out of step with the rest of the Midwest. And we found that none of them explained it except for one, which was government policy and regulations. And a lot of people just can't afford to live here anymore.
This is a great state, but it could be so much greater. The center's existence and work have never been more important at any time in the recent history of Minnesota, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
Happy birthday, John. I cannot believe you are 70. You have such a youthful mien. You are so suffused in boyish charm. You have that mischievous smile that has never changed through the years.
Hey, John, happy 17th birthday. Wait, what's that? 70th birthday? Okay, I got that wrong. Happy 70th birthday, although 17th birthday seems more appropriate.
Happy birthday, John. Hi, John. Your brothers and your father wish you a very happy birthday.
Hi, John. I want to wish you a happy 70th birthday. I'm so proud to call you a friend. I've admired your work for decades at Powerline and now at the Center for the American Experiment. I hope you have a great birthday.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday.
I'm here to wish John something, you know the thing. I have my Joe Biden earpiece. Happy, move it up, birthday. Happy birthday, John.
Happy birthday, Grandpa John. We love you. Your favorite granddaughter, your favorite grandkids.
Hey John, happy 70th birthday. This is a big one. I can't believe you're that old. But I want you to know you've done South Dakota and Watertown awful proud. Happy birthday.
John, this is George speaking. I'm wishing you a very happy birthday. Thank you for all the hard and incredible work you do for both America and for the center. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you in the last few years. Thank you so much. Happy birthday, John.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, John.
Happy birthday, John.
Hi, John. One of the most important things in life is the friends we make. And I found in business, I've made some of my best friends. And you are definitely one of them. I want to wish you all the best for a happy and healthy birthday. Love you, buddy.
Hi, John. I know you're already checking your watch to make sure that we're not getting too far behind on tonight's schedule because of this ad hoc tribute. So let me make it quick. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
John.
Happy birthday, John. You're the best husband and the best father and the smartest person anyone I know knows. I also know that you've only begun to fight. Happy birthday.
Cheers, Dad, and happy birthday.
I had no idea that was coming. That is a total surprise. They never showed me that version of the video. I'm totally shocked and nonplussed and deeply impressed that they actually got Mark Stein to wish me a happy birthday, along with all of those other folks and family members, and most of all, our staff. I'm really moved by that, and I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you so much. It's very, very sweet. Well, okay, moving on. It really is amazing how much American Experiment has accomplished over the past year, how much impact we have had here in Minnesota and across the country. And we owe it all to the thousands of Minnesotans who support us so loyally and so enthusiastically. Now we'll move on to the next stage of tonight's event. Politicians have good qualities, but too often courage is not one of them. So when we saw a great example of political courage right next door in South Dakota, we wanted to recognize it. This year, we are presenting American Experiment's Courage in Government Award to Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. The award will be presented by Howard Rutt, a member of the Center's Board of Directors.
On behalf of Center of the American Experiment, it's my pleasure to present the Courage in Government Award for 2020 to Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. We are honoring Governor Noem with this award because she has broken two of the cardinal rules of government. First, during her entire life, Governor Noem has violated the government rule against clarity. She was born on a family ranch outside of Watertown, South Dakota, where, while she was still in college, her father was tragically killed in a farm accident. So with 100% clarity, she dropped out of college and moved back home to help run the family ranch with her siblings. She entered public life in 2006 when she ran for and won a seat in South Dakota's House of Representatives. She followed that up in 2010 by running for and winning South Dakota's seat in the U.S. Congress, to which she was reelected 3 times before being elected governor of South Dakota in 2018. Clarity in purpose and clarity in result. And here's just one example of her refreshing clarity in government communications. In June, in response to the movement to destroy historical statues, the conservative commentator Ben Shapiro tweeted, "When is our woke historical revisionist priesthood going to insist on blowing up Mount Rushmore?" To which Governor Noem responded with crystal clarity, "Not on my watch." The second rule that Governor Noem has violated is that politicians must put government power above individual freedom. That is what governors across the country did in response to the coronavirus pandemic. But Governor Noem refused to order a shutdown of economic and social activity, explaining that Americans are a free people. She realized that South Dakota is not as dense as New York City, in both meanings of the word, and that her state could rely on individuals to take appropriate precautions through education and voluntary cooperation with government, while she focused on protecting vulnerable senior citizens in assisted living. For putting individual freedom above government power, Governor Noem was assailed mercilessly by the critics. But what are the results? South Dakota has less than 1/2 the coronavirus fatality rate per capita of Minnesota, combined with much less economic damage. In presenting this Courage in Government Award to Kristi Noem, American Experiment also is violating a cardinal rule, the rule against recognizing an elected official from a neighboring state. Particularly here in Minnesota, we're not allowed to praise a government official from Iowa, Wisconsin, or the Dakotas. The center's board tried hard to avoid violating this rule by trying to find a statewide elected official here in Minnesota who is worthy. Lord knows we tried, but we failed miserably. And that is why, on behalf of Center of the American Experiment, I'm pleased to present the Courage in Government Award for 2020 to Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you all so much for honoring me with this award. But the congratulations should really go to the people of South Dakota. Back on March 10th, we got our first cases of COVID-19 in South Dakota. We had already set up and prepared in an emergency operations center some of the items that we would tackle when the first cases would come. I had consulted with my health professionals, but also my general counsel and attorneys to find out exactly what path we should take, what authorities I had, and what authorities I did not have as governor of the state of South Dakota. Now, at the end of the day, what I did was I trusted my people, and they trusted me. Now, the decisions that I made to not close businesses, to not define an essential business, to not even tell people that they had to shelter in place, but to let them make decisions for their family and give them flexibility to run their businesses and put a roof over their head and food on the tables, well, those decisions weren't always the most popular. The media criticized me constantly for taking a different path. Now, I appreciate this Courage and Political Leadership Award. I do think that what we did in South Dakota was very different than what other governors or even mayors or local officials did. I saw a lot of fear motivate people in the last several months, but I do appreciate the fact that the people of South Dakota saw a challenge and they tackled it together. So I'd like to thank everyone at the Center for the American Experiment for your hard work fighting for the things that make our country special. I am blessed to be recognized by you. Thank you so much. Keep it up, and God bless you.
This is the actual physical award, which is quite lovely. We are sending it to Governor Noem at her office in South Dakota. Now it is time for our featured speaker, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah served as White House press secretary for President Donald Trump from 2017 to 2019. A trusted confidant of the president, Sarah advised him on everything from press and communication strategy to personnel and policy. For 2.5 years, Sarah was at the president's side, battling with the media, working with lawmakers and CEOs, and accompanying the president on foreign trips. Sarah has previously worked in leadership roles for U.S. senators, governors, and presidential campaigns. In Arkansas, Sarah was a senior advisor to Senator Tom Cotton in 2014 and was campaign manager for Senator John Boozman in 2010. And in 2007 and 2008, Sarah helped lead her father, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, to victory in the Iowa caucuses and 7 other states as his national political director. She has been recognized as one of the best political operatives of her generation. And she is the author of a brand new book that tells the inside story of her time in the White House. It is called Speaking for Myself: Faith, Freedom, and the Fight of Our Lives Inside the Trump White House. There is a link on the AmericanExperimentGala.com webpage where you can buy the book. I'm reading it right now, and I highly recommend it. And if you want to ask Sarah a question, just type it into the chat box on the AmericanExperimentGala.com page. We won't get to all the questions, but we will take as many as we can. Now I am happy to introduce to you Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Thank you so much. And I wish that we were all together in person, but I'm glad that if we can't be together, we can still find ways to talk about some of the biggest issues facing our country. I'm honored to get to be part of what the American Experiment and their team are doing. They do phenomenal work, not just in Minnesota, but across the country that really has real world impact on a lot of us. Most people watching probably know me as the former White House press secretary. And while that was one of the best jobs I've ever had and may ever have, the most important job I'll ever have is that of being a mom. I was the very first mom to ever serve as the White House press secretary. I have 3 kids, Scarlett, who's 8, Huck, who is 6, and George, who is 5. So it's pretty wild at my house almost all the time. One of the things that I try to do as a parent, because I was working in this all-consuming 24/7, 365-day-a-year job, I wanted them to understand why our family was making that sacrifice, why we wanted to serve, and why we were part of the administration. So I wanted them to see some of that firsthand. I grew up in a political family, and I did a lot of that with my dad, and I wanted my kids to do the same. So I tried to take them with me to events and engage them at different activities when it was allowed. I learned very quickly at the ages that my kids are, I couldn't handle all 3 and actually get work done. So I put them on a rotation system. And there was a big event taking place at the White House called Bring Your Kids to Work Day. My son Huck, it was his turn. He was 4 at the time. And I debated, most of the kids that are coming are going to be a little bit older. Can Huck handle a full day with Bring Your Kid to Work Day at the White House? But it was his turn. And after a good debate, my husband and I decided that we had to follow through and let Huck come with me. He would be on standby. If things got bad, I could call him and he could come pick Huck up before I lost my job. So Huck and I, off we go to the White House, and we have a spectacular day. He's got on his little blazer, his bow tie. He couldn't be cuter. I took about 10 million pictures. The big moment of the day is at the end. He had been on absolutely perfect behavior up until this moment. And all of the kids gather in the Rose Garden in order to have a photo taken with the president and the vice president. We had done something different this particular year, and we had invited the press to bring their kids to join us as well. So I'd gone into the Oval Office and I was briefing the president and letting him know, sir, just a reminder, half of the people out there, their parents are reporters, so you might watch what you say. Naturally, the president ignored my advice, but off we were going anyway, out into this chaotic filled Rose Garden with kids. As the president and I continue talking, we look over and we notice that the bushes in the Rose Garden had started to violently shake. We both think, well, no, that's very odd. And about the time I realize what's happening, this little blonde head pops up and runs full speed directly to the glass of the Oval Office. And this little boy presses his face completely up against the glass of the Oval. The president jumps back, oh my gosh, there's a little boy looking into the Oval Office. I say, yes, sir, that's my son, Huck. He said, well, Sarah, at least he's handsome. Not to let that be the only mark that Huck left. Shortly after, we step out of the Oval Office and we walk out onto the famous colonnade where you've probably seen presidents photographed many times before. The president walks out and he's walking down, and all the kids are gathered out in the grass. Right as the president is getting to be directly in front of all the kids, one little boy breaks free and again is running full speed, but this time not to the window, but directly at the president himself. He crouches down to receive the little boy, and just before Secret Service intervenes or the president picks him up, the little boy sidesteps the president, goes around him, and runs and jumps in my arms where I was standing about 10 feet behind him. The president turns around and kind of gives me a look like, are you kidding? This kid again? I just laughed, and I knew in that moment, though, I hadn't done everything wrong as a parent, because for every other kid out there that day, the president of the United States was the most important person there. But for my son, it was his mom. Not all bad. Don't worry, I still have plenty of time. He's only 6, so I'm sure I have plenty of time to mess him up. But hopefully, we'll continue on the right path. It's one of the reasons I want my kids to be with me and part of what we're doing and get to see why it's so important to be involved and to stand up for what's right. I often used to tell the press, they would constantly ask me about the chaos going on in the White House. And I used to tell them, if you want to see real chaos, you should come to my house at 7 o'clock in the morning, trying to get 3 kids out the door, dressed, teeth brushed, lunches packed, and on to school on time. That is real chaos. They never really appreciated that very much. But one of the things that I do know is that if we do want to see real chaos, then we can allow the liberal mob to take over our country. We can allow the liberal mob to bully us and tear our cities apart and take away everything that matters most. Thankfully, we have groups like the American Experiment that are standing up and making sure citizens are informed when they're voting, when they're making decisions, when they're supporting policy. Never has there been a more important time for groups like this to exist and to inform the public on what is really at stake. There's been a lot of nonsense over the last couple of weeks about the president and the military. I traveled to more than 20 countries with the president and dozens of states. I watched him interact with men and women of the military every single day. I never saw him do anything but respect and admire the men and women that serve and keep us free. One particular occasion, it was never more vivid how much the president loved our military and how much we depend on them to keep us free. It was December of 2018, and the president was taking a secret trip to Iraq. I joined him on that trip. We had just finished tucking our kids into bed, cleaning up wrapping paper, and I had to tell my family, I have to leave, and I can't tell you where I'm going. It was late on Christmas night, and I drove myself to Andrews Air Force Base, where I boarded Air Force One that was still in the hangar, completely tucked away in a way I'd never seen it before. We took off with no one in the world other than those of us on the plane and a few other members of the military that knew what was going on and were part of the planning of this secret mission. We landed in Iraq in complete and total darkness. We knew the severity of what we were doing and the seriousness and the reality really sank in when on our way to that war-torn area, we were briefed that if we heard particular noises, that meant we were under attack and we should take cover. That was pretty scary. As we landed in total darkness and we stepped off the plane, we walked into a dining hall where hundreds of troops had gathered. They had come together thinking they were having Christmas dinner with senior military leadership from around the region. What they didn't know was that the commander-in-chief and the first lady would be the ones that they would be having dinner with. When we walked into the room, it absolutely erupted. The enthusiasm and the applause and the support was something I hadn't seen. And I've been to a lot of Trump rallies, but this was different. This was a mutual admiration and respect between the commander-in-chief, Donald J. Trump, and the men and women who were serving in our military. As the president and the first lady started to make their way around the room, one of the young soldiers from the back of the room yelled out, "Mr. President, I re-enlisted in the military because of you." And the president yelled back, "And son, we're here because of you." He wanted them to know how much he appreciated them, how much he respected them for putting their lives on the line and making the sacrifices that they did. We were spending a few hours away from our families on Christmas. They were spending every day away from theirs. As the president and first lady continued making their way around the tables, that young soldier came up to me and he said, "Sarah, you have a tough job." I kind of laughed and said, "Are you kidding me? I take questions. You take bullets, bombs. You have a tough job. What I do is nothing." And he looked up at me, and in a moment that I will cherish for the rest of my life, he tore the patch off of his uniform from his shoulder and placed it into my hand. And he said, "Sarah, we're in this together." And in that moment, I was reminded of what makes America so special, what makes America the greatest country on the face of the planet. There is still good and evil in the world. And in a world full of bad guys, Those are the good guys who keep us free, who fight every single day and stand in the gap so that we don't have to, so that we get to live in the greatest country. I'm so grateful. I'm so appreciative to those people who allow the rest of us to live the lives that we do. We have to have those people that are willing to stand up for the good and fight the good fight. Everybody isn't called to be in the military, but we are all called to be part of the good fight. Never has this lesson been more apparent than in a story of an 11-year-old girl who traveled with her family to Israel. They were going over a 2-week period where they would stop in political, historical, and biblical sites. They had come through most of the trip, and at the end of the trip, they were going to stop at a place called Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Museum, a place dedicated to remembering the lives and celebrating the people who were taken from us in one of the darkest moments of our world's history. The parents debated whether or not their 11-year-old daughter could handle going through that museum. You see, they'd been to Israel many times before, and they knew how intense this museum was. But they wanted her to understand why it was so important for good people to stand up for what's right, why it was so important for her to always stand up for her principles and her values. And they decided that the father would walk her through the museum, and if at any point it became too much for her, he could take her out. The day came, and the little girl knew something important was taking place because of the behavior of her parents, but she wasn't really fully understanding the significance of this place or why it was so important to her mom and dad. As they walked into the museum, the little girl didn't say anything as she looked at the photos of the shoes, thousands of shoes piled dozens of feet high that were taken right off of the feet of innocent children. They walked through the museum, and she listened to the voices of the Holocaust survivors depicting the awful things that they had lived through and survived. She still hadn't said a word. They continued through, and she looked at the photos and watched the videos showing people being marched to their death, photos of the bodies stacked one on top of another. She hadn't spoken, but at some point during the walk through the museum, she reached up and she grabbed hold of her dad's hand. As they'd been in the museum more than an hour and a half, the little girl had not said a single word. The father, all the time, not really looking at the exhibit, but watching his daughter and wondering, had he put too much pressure on her? Had he exposed her to something that may have been too hard for her to handle? Had he done something he couldn't take back? He continued watching his daughter as they got to the end where they stepped up to a lectern that had a guest book on it. The little girl reached into her father's pocket and took out a pen that she knew he always kept. There in the guest book, she wrote down her name and her address, and the father looked over the little girl's shoulder where they had a section for comments. And he wondered, will she write anything? Will she say something to let me know that she understood, that she gets why we're here? And in that moment, she wrote down words that neither he nor she will ever forget. Why didn't somebody do something? It's very simple, but why didn't somebody do something? And in that moment, the father knew that she got it. She understood that when good people don't stand up for what's right, bad things happen. It was so simple, but so profound for both the father and the little girl. A lesson that neither one of them would ever forget. The reason I know that story so well is because that was my dad, and I was the little girl that he walked through that museum. I will remember the things I saw that day for the rest of my life. And I will be reminded to always stand up and fight the good fight, to always try to be the good in this world. We are all called to be part of the battle. We are all called to be the somebodies who do something. It's all in a different way. Some people may be very public and called to run for office. Some may be behind the scenes and pushing policy and making sure those who are making decisions are informed to make good ones. But at the end of the day, we all have a cause, and we are all called to be the somebodies who do something. I'm so glad to be with an organization tonight like the American Experiment that's willing to be the somebodies who make sure that people are informed, making sure that they have good policy, making sure that we're fighting the good fight. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for joining with me in this new way to celebrate things in our country via Zoom and other ways. I look forward to taking your questions. And again, I just want to say thank you to John and the team for letting me be part of this special night tonight. So with that, I'll turn it back over to John and we'll take a few questions. Hopefully, these will be a little bit easier than some of the ones I'm used to in my previous live. So thank you again for having me. And with that, John, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'll start a couple of questions. We've got a bunch of questions coming in from our viewers that are piling up. But let me pick up where you left off, Sarah. For something like 2.5 years, you were the press secretary. You went out there day after day after day. It was combat. I mean, we've never seen hostility like that. We've never seen reporters openly partisan, openly attacking you, insulting you in various ways. What was that like to go out there and do battle with these reporters?
Well, I can't say that I enjoy the insults, but it was an honor and a privilege of a lifetime to get to stand behind that podium and speak on behalf of the president and fight for things that I believed in. I think the president has done an incredible job, certainly over the 2.5 years I was there, but also the full 4 years that he's been there. Never have we seen the intensity at which they have come after this president, yet he keeps getting up and keeps fighting back every single day. I'm proud of the work that we did, and I'm very honored that I got to play a small part in his administration to help move our country forward.
And the hate, Sarah, that you and your family encountered, it didn't only come from the reporters, crazy as that is. As I recall, there was an occasion when you and your family were having dinner in a restaurant somewhere in the DC area, and you got accosted and harassed and actually eventually chased out of the restaurant by a bunch of leftists. What was that like?
Well, we were at the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, a couple hours from DC. I had gone to meet the rest of my husband and his extended family for a weekend down there. And shortly, almost minutes after I sat down at the table, the owner of the restaurant came up, asked to speak with me so that she could tell me that she thought I was a horrible person, a terrible person, that I didn't belong in their community. And then she asked me to leave the restaurant. I quickly just grabbed my things. I didn't create a scene. She was trying to frantically video me leaving the restaurant. I leaned down to tell my husband I'd been kicked out, and I walked out. My husband and I went home from there. We weren't feeling like hitting another restaurant in that moment. But the rest of our family went to another restaurant across the street, and the restaurant owner, and a lot of people don't know this, and it was why it was important that I wrote about this in my book that you mentioned earlier, but the restaurant owner actually followed the rest of my family to the other restaurant, gathered a group of her friends, and protested and harassed them outside of that restaurant. Despite the fact several of those family members, like I said, extended family members, were not Donald Trump supporters and had actually voted for Hillary Clinton. It wasn't until one of them went out and told her, look, Sarah's not here, you're not helping our cause, that they finally packed up and went home. But the level of nastiness and harsh attacks that were leveled, not just against the president, but against each of those of us on staff, was something I don't think any of us were prepared for going in. I certainly knew our policies would be challenged, legislation, agenda, but I never thought the level of the personal attacks that would be lobbed against us. Everything was on the table to our harshest critics. My weight, my appearance, my fitness to be a mother, even my ability to bake a pie, which I found very appalling as a Southerner. And, it was difficult. And there were a lot of days that were hard to keep fighting. But because we knew what was at stake, we knew what was on the line, we kept going. I had, thankfully, a very strong foundation in my faith that helped define me. I didn't need the New York Times or the Washington Post to do that for me. I had a faith that really defined me, and I knew that God had created me for a purpose. I had a family that loved me, and those were things that help us get through even those darkest and most difficult days.
Sarah, we are seeing a level of hate directed against President Trump and those who work for him, as you did, that is, I think, unprecedented. I mean, certainly since the Civil War, we've not seen anything like this. Why do you think that is?
You know, I think that there are a lot of reasons that we have seen this intensity. I think just the overall dehumanizing of individuals. We have seen a lot of that through social media over the last several years. But I think in a large part because we have somebody like Donald Trump who came in and changed the way that the system operates. He has beaten all of the big institutions out there, and they don't like him for it. The press was out to get him in 2016, and they didn't. Higher ed, Hollywood, they all didn't want him to win in 2016, and he did it despite all of their attacks, all of their criticism, and he did it without them. And I think that makes them very mad. He did it without a lot of the special interest groups that are so traditionally in control of the process. And he has governed in a way that he did it on his own terms and without them. And he has gotten things done and been successful. And I think that's one of the reasons we have seen just this intensity come up. We have also watched the mainstream party of the Democrat Party move so radically to the left that everything is on the table for them. And I think it is a very dangerous place that they have allowed their party to move.
Well, there really is. And it seems to me that they have become outright anti-American. Now, you grew up in a patriotic home, obviously, with your father being governor of Arkansas and so forth. But nowadays, there are a great many school children who are being taught to hate America. Why do you think this anti-Americanism has taken hold? I mean, there's no war going on. These are prosperous times. Well, what's going on?
Well, I think it's awful that we have started to become a country in this previous administration where we started to apologize for being America. We shouldn't apologize. We should be proud of who we are. We should be proud that we're the envy of the world. That doesn't mean that we don't help other people. We most certainly should. When we are able, we should help others that we can and show them the way that a true democracy works and help them come alongside us. But we shouldn't apologize for being a great country. And I think we have seen that take place. I have no idea why anyone would want to make America like the socialist countries that we have seen completely fail and collapse. We have never seen that work ever. I don't know why we would want to take the best country in the world and try to make it like some of the worst. And I find it truly mind-boggling. It's one of the reasons I think the work that you all do is so important, because you're really informing the public and giving them good factual information that they can base their decisions off of when they go in to support people. I think so often we have allowed the news to be blended into fact and opinion. They used to be very separate entities, and now they are blurred into one. I think it's very dangerous from journalism. People don't know where to get good information, and so they get so much misinformation from the media, from social media, and they're not making informed decisions. I think groups like yours have never been more important than they are now.
Sarah, there's an extensive section in your book on the Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination. Obviously, that's become very, very timely with the vacancy that's just opened up on our Supreme Court. And I'd appreciate it if you'd kind of recap for our viewers, talk a little bit about that period of the Kavanaugh nomination, the reaction to it, how that played out, and then your thoughts about what we're going to see over the next couple of months. Already, there's just hysteria over the idea that this vacancy could be filled.
In the last 24 hours, we have seen the level of hostility go from an 8 or 9 to about a 15 on a 10-point scale. I have seen people saying we should burn it all down, burn the cities, burn the courthouses. And I'm thinking, whoa. This is not America. This is not how we operate. We're better than that. What happened to Brett Kavanaugh was absolutely appalling and disgusting. He was one of the most respected legal minds in the country. From both sides, frankly, he had such a level of respect and admiration from people on all sides of the legal arena until he became a Donald Trump nominee for the Supreme Court. And what happened to him, what happened to his family, the willingness of the Democrats to go after him with the level of hate and anger that they did, and the willingness to destroy a good person when they had nothing to go on, was absolutely mind-blowing, I think, to any of us involved in the process. This was when the level of hostility for those of us in the administration also really heated up. I know a lot of my colleagues had difficulty going to places in public because that battle had become so intense. Unfortunately, I think the one we're about to have will be far worse and far more vitriolic, far more angry than what we even experienced with Brett Kavanaugh. I sat in the room for the murder board where we had to ask him questions. Here I was, one of the second times to ever meet him, asking him about the most intimate details of his personal life. And the reason that we had to do that was because we knew that the Democrats in the hearing, nothing was off the table. We knew nothing would be off limits. They would ask him everything, and we had to prepare him. And so we did. And there were some very awkward and uncomfortable moments, but I think it had to happen because we knew that even however hard we came at him, it would be so much harder when he sat in that hearing, and we weren't wrong. The level of just anger and outright hatred towards Brett Kavanaugh in those hearings was something we've never seen in a Supreme Court hearing. But we fought. The president stuck by his side. I was extremely proud of him for doing that. And ultimately, we prevailed and he won. And Brett Kavanaugh sits on the court today. Donald Trump's victory in 2016 is the difference of a 6-3 liberal court versus a 6-3 conservative court. It makes all the difference in the world. They were right. Elections have consequences. And one of the greatest legacies of Donald Trump's presidency will be his federal judge appointments. Not just the Supreme Court, but the over 200 other justices that he has appointed and have been confirmed. He is making a generational impact, and I think it will be the greatest legacy he leaves behind as president.
Based on the experience that you had as part of the team working on the Kavanaugh nomination, what advice would you give to the folks who are serving President Trump now as they look ahead to what could be an even more and even crazier kind of environment?
Well, I think the most important thing they can do is, find a fighter, because you're going to need somebody, whoever the president selects, he or she is going to need to be a very tough individual and willing to fight and be prepared for everything. Nothing is off the table. They have to be prepared for every scenario. And I think they need to gear up for probably one of the most intense battles that we've ever seen in a Senate hearing.
One of our viewers, Sarah, asked a question that I know all of us have wondered about from time to time. You worked for a president who liked to do some of his own communicating, and he liked to do some of it on Twitter, and sometimes it was kind of unpredictable. Talk a little bit, if you would, about what it was like. Did that make your job easier, harder? Did you like the tweets, not like the tweets? Tell us about that, if you would.
There were certainly a few I could have done without. But at the end of the day, no one elected me to anything. They elected Donald Trump. My job was to communicate the president's message. And so I think a lot of the reason that Donald Trump won in 2016 is because he didn't do business as usual. He was not a scripted robot. He wasn't your regular politician. He tells you where he is on any given topic at any given time. You know what he's thinking. And I think a lot of people find it refreshing that they hear directly from the president. That doesn't mean they like everything they hear, but they at least know where he is on almost everything, because he tells you, and not just through Twitter, but also through his constant contact with the press. He does question and answer sessions almost every single day, whether it's in the Oval Office or the briefing room or the South Lawn to and from Marine One. The president is constantly engaging and constantly talking directly to the American people. I think that's important. Anytime you can hear from the president instead of a spokesperson, that's always better. Certainly it made my job a little harder, but his job wasn't to make mine easier. My job was to make his easier, to go out and communicate his message and his vision to the world. And that's what I tried to do every day.
One of our viewers asks, what was the preparation process for one of your daily press briefings? We've all seen those press briefings. There had to be a lot of work that preceded them.
One of the most important things, despite the fact the president was always fighting with the press, he still understood the importance and the power of the press. And he knew it would be impossible for me to do my job if I wasn't well informed and if I wasn't in sync with his thinking. So he took me everywhere. I did every single foreign trip the president went on during my 2.5 years. I was in the room for key decisions and part of the discussion as policy was happening, being made, and decisions were taking place. So I was constantly learning and listening and building a foundation of information about what was going on a number of areas, and always staying in tune with where the president was. On briefing day itself, I would spend anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours before the briefing doing a murder board session with my staff, who were absolutely incredible and so talented. And I think they probably enjoyed getting to pretend to be reporters and be a little bit mean to me from time to time in those sessions. But they would just ask question after question that we thought would come up that day. Some days we got it right on the money and we knew all of the questions that we thought would come and we were right. Some days we missed it and I had to either go with my gut instinct on what I knew and kind of where I had heard the president on a particular topic, or we would have to circle back with the reporter if we didn't have specific information on a given topic. But it was usually that murder board session, that hour and a half before. And the last thing I would do before I went out for every briefing, there was a daily devotional called Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. And right before I would go out, I would take a couple minutes by myself, read that daily devotional, do a quick prayer, and that would just sort of calm me and remind me what was most important in my life. And that gave me the confidence and the peace to go up and take on even the toughest critics and the hardest questions. And so that was always kind of my woo-saw moment right before. And that's what I would do last before walking into the room.
Another of our viewers points out that Kayleigh McEnany has succeeded you in the gladiatorial arena with the hostile press, and wonders, did you give her any advice when she took that job about dealing with the White House press corps?
I did. I sent her a note just before her very first briefing. Kayleigh and I've known each other for a long time. In fact, little known secret that a lot of people probably don't know is we both had one of the same people teach us the ropes in messaging and communications. But one of Kayleigh's very first jobs was as an intern for my dad at Fox News on his show there. And so I've known Kayleigh for a long time, and we got to learn from one of the best in the business on how to handle tough questions. And I sent her a note that day. One of the things that really helped me, and I know Kaylee is a person of deep faith as well, was knowing that you had that. I told her to be herself. God had created her unique and special, and she didn't need to be anybody other than who he created her to be. And if she did that, I think everything else would fall into line. She has done a really great job, and she gives it back to them as much as they give it to her. I sent her a few other notes, but we've had a good back and forth and continue to have a good relationship to this day.
Well, as all the world knows, COVID-19 has been one of the big news stories of 2020. It's why we're having this virtual event tonight instead of our usual annual dinner, which we would have had in the spring, according to the original schedule. A lot of people, especially a lot of people on the right, believe that the COVID situation has revealed the potential for government overreach, for executive orders with dubious, legal or constitutional basis, and the declaration of an emergency being sort of an all-purpose justification for anything that a governor might want to do. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with the people who see it that way? And how do you think we can prevent future governments from overreaching next time there's an emergency?
Well, I definitely think we have to be very aware of certainly the government trying to dictate and control too much of our lives. I think one of the things that we have seen in this process and been reminded of is just how important every single election is, not just president, not even just the Senate and the House, but our governors, our mayors, our local officials who have really played a big role in this process. I think it has been a huge reminder that every election matters. Every election we need to pay attention to. We need to make sure we have good candidates in all of those offices so that we have people who are really putting the best interest of the people, not the best interest of the government, at the heart of the decision. And so never in any point in our country since I've been alive have I been reminded more just how important paying attention to every single election, making sure we have good candidates, making sure we have conservative people in office more than we have right now throughout this last 6 or 7 months.
Here's a question from a high school senior. And I know she speaks for a whole lot of young people in America today. She asks, what's your advice for a high school senior who is constantly challenged for her conservative beliefs at school?
It's not easy. And even as an adult, it's not easy. But I think one of the most important things you can do in life is to really know who you are, know what you believe in, and be proud of that. Find other people who believe like you do, who are willing to fight the good fight and build a support system. We cannot allow the liberal mob to bully us and to destroy the country and the cities that we love so much. I know it's not easy, but I think know what you believe in, be ready to defend it because you will have to, and be proud. Do not let them make you feel like you are a bad person because you think differently than they do, but do it in a way that you treat them with kindness and respect. We can certainly disagree with people, but we can do it in a way that is respectful. I never want to be like the people that I claim not to like, and that I don't want to operate in the angry and nasty way that we see coming from the liberal mob these days. But you absolutely, at your core, just know who you are. Know that you are loved by a creator that will always be there, even when you feel like you're fighting alone. Know that you're not. You have a God that loves you, and there are thousands, if not millions of people in your community and across this country that believe the way that you do and will be fighting alongside you. And be thankful that you have a president who is willing to fight and push back with you. And that is supporting you in those efforts.
This next question actually ties in with the one that we just talked about, Sarah. In your book, you write about the fact that you went to Little Rock Central High School, and it's a very fun chapter in your book. You obviously enjoyed your high school years, and it's a nice chapter. But that high school in 1957 was the site of a famous event where, this is 2.5 years after Brown versus Board of Education, 9 Black children tried to go to school at Little Rock Central, Governor Faubus, along with some state police, stood in the schoolhouse door, blocked it, wouldn't let them in. A hostile crowd screamed insults at these little kids. It was really one of the most terrible incidents in that civil rights era. But yet that was the high school that you went to, totally integrated, and obviously for you a positive experience. And so our viewer asks, how have race relations changed in Arkansas and in the U.S. in general since 1957? And what insights can you offer about current race relations?
Well, one of the most important moments for me during high school was the 40th anniversary of the Little Rock Nine trying to enter Central High School. Like you said, in 1957, it was the governor who shut the door and stood and tried to block those students from coming in. It wasn't until the president ordered him to step aside, federalize the guard, and allowed those students to make it into the school. It became such a point of contention and so high profile that when the only of the 9 students, Ernest Green, actually graduated from Central High, Martin Luther King Jr. attended that graduation ceremony at Little Rock Central with his family. Fast forward to my sophomore year of high school at Little Rock Central, and on the 40th anniversary, all 9 of those students were back at the school and had the double doors to the front of the building opened and held open by the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, from Arkansas, and my dad, Mike Huckabee. The very doors that had been slammed in their faces were now being held open by the president and the governor and the mayor of Little Rock. What a remarkable shift. What a positive movement forward. That doesn't mean we don't still have a long way to go. We certainly do, but we should be proud of the progress that we have made, and we should continue to keep fighting to make sure that we have progress and that we get rid of the evilness that is racism, and that we look for ways to bring that temperature down, to support one another. But I certainly, that moment for me in particular was so instrumental. And then my senior year of high school, we had a tradition at Central that seniors would divide into small groups and have senior breakfast parties at various houses and restaurants around town, because we wanted something that showed the unity of our class and that showed the difference of who we were as we embarked on a new millennium. We were class of 2000. We wanted to show the difference of what Central looked like as we started in the year of 2000. And so we gathered the entire senior class, instead of having individual breakfasts, for one large senior breakfast of about 700 students at the Arkansas Governor's Mansion, the home of which Governor Faubus had once lived and stopped Black students from coming, was now the site of the celebration for the entire senior class, which was a majority of African American students, to celebrate in that home. It's something I'm proud of, and something I think we could continue building on, and look for moments like that when we can empower and show that unity. I think is so important now more than ever.
Sir, we have time for just one more question. One of our viewers wants to know, do you have any interest in following your father into Arkansas politics? I've heard a lot of speculation about that.
I am definitely thinking about the Arkansas governor's race in 2022. It will be an open seat. Our governor, Asa Hutchinson, who's done a great job, will be termed out and unable to run for re-election. But right now, my focus is on 2020. I want to help the president get reelected. I want to help us keep the Senate. I'd love to see Republicans take the House back and never utter the word Speaker Pelosi again. And after we get through that, and hopefully after we get another Supreme Court nominee through, then I will make a decision and look at what 2022 looks like for me and for my family.
Sarah, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We really appreciate it. Good luck with book sales. And again, I'm reading the book right now. It's very, very good. I recommend it. And good luck with all of your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Earlier in the evening, you were introduced to our policy fellows on the video that we played. Before we sign off, I want to recognize the other members of our staff who were not seen in the video. Director of Operations, Peter Zeller, Communications Director, Katie Fulkerson, Development Consultant, Kristen Sheehan, Government Accountability Reporter Tom Stewart, Finance Director Charlie Nikoloff, Greater Minnesota Coordinator Micah Olson, Tom Mason, the editor and publisher of Thinking Minnesota, Donor Relations Coordinator Lydia Luciano, researcher Mitch Rolling, and the two people who were mostly responsible for tonight's event, communications specialist Allison Payne and event coordinator Catherine Hinderaker. And finally, thanks to Ben Friedman of Prime Image Media, who supplied the production, graphics, and video stream for the gala. If you would like to contribute toward making American Experiment bigger and even better in the coming year, there is a link on the AmericanExperimentGala.com page where you can donate to our organization. Anyone who donates $50 tonight will receive an American Experiment wine glass like this one right here. They're very nice. And for a donation of $100 or more, 2 American Experiment wine glasses. That brings our virtual gala to a close. We hope you have enjoyed it. We want to express our appreciation once again to tonight's sponsors, whom you will see listed in just a moment. And please continue to join with us in our fight to make Minnesota and America a better, freer, more prosperous place. Thank you and good night.